restrictions extended till the 7th of June. Restrictions to be relaxed tomorrow, the 31st and the 4th of June for the public to purchase essential goods. Medical trade unions ready to step down from their duties over vaccination of family members of the GMOA.
වෛද්‍යවරුන්ට පමණක් විශේෂ වූ පවුල් වල අයට විශේෂ වූ ක්‍රියාවලියක් කිරීමට මා දන්නා පරිදි මෙතෙක් සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය වෙන වැඩ පිළිවෙලක් කරන්නේ.
Bangladesh approves $200 million currency swap to Sri Lanka. Preparations to import luxury vehicles for MPs at a cost of over 3.6 billion rupees.
බඩගින්නේ පුරවැසියන් ඉන්න වෙලාව මොන മന്ത്രിවරයට වාහන ගන්න පුළුවන් මේ වගේ පෙන්눔 කරන්න උන්ගේ මිලේච්ඡ මානසිකත්වය.
A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to tonight's edition of Primetime News coming to you live from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo. I'm Arundhati Mudanayaka together with our interpreter this evening, Brian De Cruz. Let's take a look at the stories in detail. The current travel restrictions have been extended until the 7th of June. The restrictions will be relaxed on 3 days between today and the 7th of June. A joint media briefing was convened today at the Department of Government Information to inform the public of the decisions reached during the COVID-19 meeting chaired by the President.
The travel restrictions that were imposed on the 21st of May will be relaxed tomorrow, the 25th of May at 4 a.m. It is important to note that this is not a removal of travel restrictions. The restrictions will be relaxed. The travel restrictions will be reimposed at 11 p.m. on the 25th and continue across the island till the 31st of May. Travel restrictions that will be relaxed on the 31st will be reimposed at 11 p.m. on the same day and will continue till 4 a.m. on the 4th of June. The travel restrictions that will be relaxed at 4 a.m. on the 4th of June will be reimposed at 11 p.m. that night and continue till 4 a.m. on the 7th of June.
Can residents of villages placed under isolation travel tomorrow?
Residents of areas placed under isolation cannot travel tomorrow. As there are many COVID-19 patients in those areas, they cannot mingle with the rest of the public.
For what reasons can the public travel tomorrow?
Some people think that the entire country will be open tomorrow, but that will not happen. We cannot say that the country will reopen tomorrow. But while the travel restrictions continue to be in place, the public will be given an opportunity to purchase essential goods.
What are the shops that can remain open tomorrow?
Sillera will not sell, Avushada sell.
Only retail stores, pharmacies and shops selling fish, meat, vegetables, fruits and bakery items can remain open tomorrow. A mechanism has been put in place by the Presidential Task Force for the distribution of goods across the country. This is under the committee headed by Minister Namal Rajapaksa. By now, in all districts across the country, rural committees have got involved and identified 2 retail stores and recommended through the Grama Niladhari for those shops to remain open.
How should people act when they leave their homes tomorrow?
Bring your identity card. But the system based on the last digit of the identity card will not be implemented tomorrow. The police will need to check if you are a permanent or temporary resident of the area. You cannot even travel outside your area on foot. No one can travel in vehicles, bicycles or three-wheelers. You must travel on foot. Someone might ask what could be done if there is a person who cannot walk and lives alone. In such a situation, we can intervene and provide the necessary concessions. Parking vehicles is prohibited.
How will the public fulfill their daily needs amid strict travel restrictions?
I would like to remind you that mobile vendors will continue to operate during this time period. I would like to inform the farming community that your produce is of utmost importance and please make sure that you hand it over to these mobile vendors. For that, you do not have to go to the police. You can obtain the relevant license from your divisional secretariat.
Will permission be given to the general public to visit banks?
When the general public steps out tomorrow, they can visit the nearest ATM at their house, but they are required to follow health guidelines there as well. I received many WhatsApp messages from various parts of the country saying that their closest ATM is located 10 kilometers away from their house, especially in places like Vanni. Our government will never put the people of this country in such a situation. There will be no such issue if you really want to visit an ATM machine. We might have to carry out bank services. There are employees who have to be paid. If banks are open, They have to operate with the minimum number of members in their staff.
Will other groups be able to travel apart from essential services?
ඒ අපනයන සඳහා
Employees working at factories that are open for export purposes will be able to travel to their places of work, but their names have to be included in the BOI approval list. If there are any other inquiries, they can get in touch with the Director General of the BOI and obtain the necessary information. State sector employees will be called to work by the officers in charge, but we would like to request them to limit the number of employees they request to come to work.
තරම් කැදවීමෙන් වැළකින්න කියන තමයි අපි ඉල්ලීමක් කරන්නේ.
What is the fate of daily labourers due to these strict travel restrictions?
ජනාධිපතිතුමා උපදෙස් දුන්නා.
The President has advised the Presidential Task Force to come out with a program for them. The task force will compile a report on that and present it to the President tomorrow.
බලාපොරොත්තු
Another 2,283 COVID-19 patients have been identified today. Accordingly, the total number of COVID patients reported from the country has risen to 166,484. Meanwhile, 1,296 COVID-19 patients recovered today. This brings the total number of patients recovered in the country to 139,947. 25,327 patients are currently receiving treatment in hospitals island-wide. The total number of deaths reported in the country due to COVID-19 currently stands at 1,210.
The government established a special hotline for essential services at the Prime Minister's office at Temple Trees under the Presidential Task Force headed by Basil Rajapaksa. The hotline 1965 will be active from today and accessible to the general public.
If your daily lives have been severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and if there are issues in accessing the state mechanism, you can contact the hotline 1965. This is a centre run under the advice of the Honourable President, the Prime Minister and Basil Rajapaksa. You can contact this centre through this number.
මේ කොරෝනා මර්ධන ජනාධිපති කාර්යසාධක බලකාය අපේ ප්‍රධානියා බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා ගියා තාම ආවේ නැහැ.
යත් වශයෙන් ඒක බොහොම කනගාටුවට කොරෝනා මර්ධන ව්‍යාපක.
It is unfortunate to see that the head of the Presidential Task Force left the country during this disaster. He might have left owing to a personal reason. We cannot argue about that. Some MPs in the parliament said that they would not have the vaccine until the general public of the country is vaccinated. Leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa and MP Buddhika Patirana had said that. That is a good policy to follow. We do not know whether the head of the Presidential Task Force to combat COVID-19 migrated for a health issue. That is his personal matter. I believe if he can set up a program to monitor this from there, it will be a very good thing at this point.
එහෙන්දලාර මේක මෙහි වෙන වැඩ පිළිලක් විදිරනවා නම් ඒකත් මම හිතනවා ජනතාවට හිතකර වේ කියලා මගේ විශ්වාසය.
නමුත් එතුමා එහෙම වැඩ පිළිවෙලක් නම් අපිට දැනගන්න ලැබෙන්නේ එතුමාගේ සද්දයක්වත් නැහැ. එතුමා රට හැරලා ගියා වගේ නිකන්.
ඔය ඉතින් ඒක ගියතරත් වැඩි වුණානේ ගියතරත්
The last time also the same thing happened. The last time he left and he came back. He played a significant part in the victory of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. If he is expecting more success in the future, he has to carry out the affairs of this task force in an honest manner.
මම හිතනවා මේ වැඩ පිළිවෙල එතුමාට කරන්න වෙයි අවංක වෙන විදියට.
New advice on conducting PCR tests.
According to the guidelines, failure to follow the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health could result in the permission granted to the respective hospitals and laboratories being revoked. The guidelines add that PCR tests at private hospitals and laboratories approved by the Health Ministry must be conducted only on the recommendation of the consultant or medical officer in charge of the triage counter. It adds after taking samples, the patients should be advised to isolate inside their homes until the report is issued under the strict supervision of the respective hospital or laboratory. The guidelines issued by the Director General of Health Services also states that if a patient tests positive for COVID-19, it is the responsibility of the hospital or laboratory to inform the epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health and the medical officer of health in charge of the respective area of the patient. It is also the duty of the hospital or laboratory to arrange the positive patients to be accommodated at an authorized COVID-19 treatment center. The guidelines also state that no walk-in or drive-through PCR or antigen testing will be permitted.
Now we cannot conduct a COVID-19 test if we want to. It has to be prescribed by a doctor. The test must be recommended by a doctor nominated by them. Where do doctors like this exist in our country? Where can we find them? When an infected person or a person suspected of being infected comes into contact with a doctor, there is a possibility of the doctor catching the virus too. Then why are these unnecessary encounters being encouraged by these circulars? This is done to pave the way for another doctor to earn some money. This burden too will ultimately be on the general public. If it is not possible to go to a private laboratory to get the tests done, and if they prevent people from doing their own tests, how can we control COVID-19 in this country?
අපි කොහොමද මේ රටේ කොරෝනා පාලනය කරන්නේ?
මේ මොහොතේත් අපි පුළුවන් තරම් බලන්නේ.
At the moment, we are doing everything we can to increase the PCR testing capacity to meet the requirement. We are not trying to increase or decrease the number of PCR tests being done. We will continue to do the PCR test as required. The government continues to increase the capacity of PCR tests. We can increase it further as required in the future. But what needs to be done at this moment is to further implement the steps required to reduce the number of cases.
ඉතාමත්ම වැදගත් වෙන්නේ.
Certain issues that cropped up in Sri Lanka's inoculation program flared up today. Many medical trade unions accused the GMOA of getting members of the family vaccinated through an exclusive list. Tensions were reported from the vaccination centre set up at the official medical housing scheme of the Colombo National Hospital. This is how the name list of the doctors and family members of doctors who qualified to receive the vaccine were displayed at the office of the Medical Officer of Health in Gotatua. Nurses and medical officers of health were vaccinated. Many people had arrived to receive the vaccine at the office of Medical Officer of Health of Maharagama. This was the situation opposite the office of the Medical Officer of Health in Minuangoda. Long queues were seen opposite the office of the Medical Officer of Health in Kirillawala, Mahara. A group clad in civilian clothing were vaccinated here.
We express our strong displeasure against the decision of the Ministry of Health to protect only members of the GMOA and their families. Also from today, we will not provide any technical assistance at vaccination centres. We have decided to step aside from all COVID-19 related duties from 7 a.m. tomorrow if a program to vaccinate all medical staff and family members of the medical staff is not announced by that time.
පෙරවරු 7:30 ඉඳලා COVID-19 සියලුම රාජකාරියන් ඉවත් වෙන්න තීරණය කරලා තියෙනවා.
We will step aside from all COVID-19 related duties. If all our fellow medical colleagues and their family members are not vaccinated, we will step down from all our duties. We strongly condemn this action.
ඒ අයගේ පවුල් වල අයටත් එන්නත ලබා දීම සිද්ධ කරේ නැත්නම් අපි සියලුම COVID රාජකාරී වලින් ඉවත් වෙනවයි කියන කාරණය මේ අවස්ථාවේදී ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
We would like to urge the Ministry of Finance to follow a more coordinated program in vaccinating the public. The vaccine must be provided to everyone from the person who provides cleaning services. That is not happening. The people who can get vaccinated. The people who cannot are left with no option. 4,000 nurses of our union have not been vaccinated. Pregnant nurses have not been vaccinated. Those who are nursing their children were not given the vaccine. We would like to ask the Ministry of Health to stop this shameless act.
අපි ළඟ හැන්ද තිබ්බයි කියලා අපිම මේක බෙදා ගැනීම නෙවෙයි කල යුත්තේ.
Just because we have the spoon, that does not mean that we must serve ourselves first. The responsibility or the damage caused by this decision must be borne by the Minister of Health, Pavitra Wanniyarachchi, the Secretary of the Ministry of Health, and those who encouraged such actions.
පැහැදිලිවම කියනවා.
The government must vaccinate all Grama Niladhari officers as soon as possible. If not, we will step down from all our duties. We have discussed this matter with all other Grama Niladhari associations, and we would like to inform the government that we will step down from all our duties if this demand is not met.
Oxford AstraZeneca second dose.
The second dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was administered to the families of medical staff today. Now they are threatening to step down from all duties if they are not vaccinated within 24 hours. How many doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is remaining in the country right now? It was the final few doses that were remaining that we got for the health sector. They are not asking for this vaccine. There is already a plan to administer the Sinopharm vaccine. There is no need to launch a trade union action for that. They are trying to show that they fought to get the vaccines, but there is no fight here.
පෙන්නන්න හදනවා අපි සටන් කරලා මේක ගත්තා කියලා. මේක සටනක් නෑ.
පළවෙනි මාත්‍රාව ලබා දුන්න අයට දෙවන මාත්‍රාව.
Besides administering the second doses of the vaccines according to their availability, I have not received any information of a special program. We cannot do anything like that. It is not only doctors that we need all sectors of the medical staff. So as far as I know, the Ministry of Health has not taken any special measures to vaccinate only the family members of doctors.
ක්‍රියාවලියක් කිරීමට මා දන්නා පරිදි මෙතෙක් සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය වෙන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් කරන්නේ.
What is black fungus? Has it come to our country too?
All I have to say is that this black fungus, also known as mucormycosis, is nothing new to Sri Lanka. In 2019, 42 patients were detected with the black fungus disease, 24 cases in 2020, and as of today 24 cases have been reported from the country this year. But I must say that none of these patients were infected with the COVID-19 virus. This disease called mucormycosis is not new to Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka as a country close to the equator has all the environmental factors required for this fungus to grow. Not only that, generally this fungal disease develops in patients with weak immune systems. All the doctors and specialists in our country are aware of this. They know what to do. We have all the facilities for that. We have sufficient stocks of the antifungal drugs which are required to treat this infection. Therefore, no Sri Lankan should fear this disease unnecessarily. This is not a communicable disease. In addition, people with weak immune systems should refrain from engaging in activities which bring them into close contact with soil, especially farming, or being involved in cultivating. The soil contains the spores of this fungus. The fungus can enter our body through our nostrils, and thereby this fungus could infect our body. Inspecting vehicles that travel through provinces and entering city limits were carried out at several places today as well. Sri Lanka police inspected vehicles that entered Colombo at the Rajagiriya flyover today. According to our correspondents, in comparison to previous days where travel restrictions were in effect, today saw a rise in the number of vehicles in motion in Colombo. Sri Lanka Air Force and Sri Lanka Police in a joint operation were in search of people who violate quarantine regulations using drone technology today as well. The search operations were carried out in Borella, Punchi Borella and in Valikada.
We now draw your attention towards the issues in the mechanism set up for the distribution of fruits and vegetables. Although wholesale stores in PETA were opened, the vendors pointed out that the sales carried out throughout the day were minimal. Vegetables such as red onions had also been damaged.
All of these items were delivered late to us from the port. We only got the good about 3 days after they arrived. That is the reason why all the items are rotten. They didn't even allow us to look at the goods we brought down. We need to pay the tax to even see our goods. All of these goods came here on Friday, but the ships had brought it here on Monday. That is a 4-day difference. We will now have to give these items to the municipal council so that they can dispose of it.
The Kappadipoli Economic Centre was crowded with traders and farmers today. According to our correspondent, the queue of lorries carrying food items were stretched as far as 4 kilometers.
A large number of farmers have brought their produce here. We face some serious issues with vegetables like tomatoes. We received large stocks of tomatoes. We also received sufficient stocks of other vegetables as well.
The Dambula dedicated economic zone was reopened after 3 days today.
දින 3 අතිරික්තයක් සමග මේ වෙනකොට කිලෝ ලක්ෂ 65ක් 70ක් අති මධ්‍යස්ථානයට කෘෂි ද්‍රව්‍ය පැමිණලා තියෙනවා. මිලදී ගැනීමට පිටස් ප්‍රදේශවලින් විශාල ප්‍රදේශ තොගවලෙන්ද පැමිණ සිටිනවා. තාමත්ම අසාධාරණ විදිහට මිල වැඩි. ගහෙන් වැඩිච්ච මිනිහට ගොනානිනවා වගේ වැඩක් තමයි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ පාරිභෝගිකයට. අද ගන්න බෑ. අද බෝංචි කිලෝ එකක් 300යි 280යි.
Although there were a large number of traders at the Tamuttegama Special Economic Centre, there were only a few farmers who visited the economic centre.
තාත්ත මධ්‍යස්ථානයට ගොවියන්ගේ පැමිණීම 75ක් වගේ අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් බඩු ඇවිල්ලා තිබුණේ නැහැ අද.
මේ එළවලු වර්ග ඔක්කොම අපි ගන්න බලාපොරොත්තු ආවා. ඒ දේවල් ගන්න බැරුණ අතරම.
මේ එළවලු කියන දේ ගබඩා කරලා තියාගන්න.
These vegetables cannot be stored and kept. This is something that the people need on a daily basis. The government must be direct in their instructions on this. Where should the farmers bring their produce? They, the farmers, can take a decision on what they need to do. The traders too can decide on what to do and how to sell. The government does not give us direct instructions on this. The people must continue to watch the news every hour to decide on what to do. We request for this process to be fixed.
ජනතාව තීරණයක් ගන්න. ඒක
Also in local news, Bangladesh Bank has approved a USD 200 million currency swap to Sri Lanka.
The Bangladesh Bank Board approved in principle a draft of $200 million currency swap deal with Sri Lanka, which is struggling to maintain a moderate foreign exchange reserve. Following a meeting, the bank board officials said the currency swap agreement would be finalized after getting a legal vetting approved by the government. Governor of the bank board, Fazli Kabir, chaired the meeting at its headquarters in Dhaka. The officials said under the draft currency swap proposal, the bank board would provide up to $200 million in foreign currency to meet Sri Lanka's foreign currency expenditures. Against the fund, Sri Lanka would keep a same amount of its local currency, rupee, with the Bangladesh bank along with a government guarantee. The bank board would get around 1 to 2% plus LIBOR from Sri Lanka as interest.
While Bangladesh is preparing to hand over Sri Lanka a currency swap of $200 million, details of a plan to import vehicles for the needs of the government and newly appointed ministers has been revealed.
Cabinet Patrikavat Mahinda Rajapaksa Mahatmaya pahugiya 18 wenida.
A special cabinet paper was presented by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa on the 18th to the cabinet about purchasing vehicles for emergencies. 3.637 billion rupees was taken from the Bank of Ceylon to be paid in lease installments to bring down these vehicles to the country. Why are they buying vehicles on debt? Are they for hospitals? Is it to support the medical staff? Is it for the quarantine centers? Why are they bringing down all these vehicles? This is to increase the efficiency of the parliamentarians. But they are still unable to explain how they would find the funds to bring down vaccines to the country. They have shamelessly presented this cabinet paper to bring down the vehicles to show their gratefulness to the people who helped them pass the Port City Bill.
කෘතගුණ සැලකීම සඳහා වාහන ගේන තමයි මේ හදන්නේ.
පොත්පතක් අද වාර්තා කරලා තියෙනවා වාහන ගෙන්නනවා අලුත් මන්ත්‍රීන්ට ලබා දෙන්න කියලා.
ඒක නෑ ඒක ගෙන්නනවා නම් ගෙන්නන්නේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවෙන්. ඉතින් මම හිතන්නේ ඔය කාරණේ පිළිබඳව ගරු කතානායකතුමාගෙන් විමසුවොත් එතුමාට පුළුවන් පැහැදිලි උත්තරයක් දෙන්න.
When Speaker Mahinda Abeyewardene was questioned in this regard, he said parliamentarians in the government as well as in the opposition met him on several occasions and raised concerns regarding the minimum facilities provided to them.
When the country is facing a crisis, when there isn't enough money to purchase PCR sets, when we are low on ICU beds, when the people of the country are living in fear of their lives as to when they will contract the virus, when the people are suffering in hunger, which parliamentarian in their right mind can bring down vehicles? This shows their malicious mentality. This culture of granting new vehicles is nothing new. The backbench MPs told us that the top-tier parliamentarians have raised objections and this gesture is a way of pleasing their grievances. These are the answers to those criticisms. During the vote for the Port City Bill, we had to wait in the vehicle queue. We see all kinds of brand new vehicles. I've never seen them before.
අලුත්ම වාහන ඉතින් ගමන් කරනවා. ඉතින් මම දැකලා නෑ එහෙම ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙන අය.
All those 225 MPs use vehicles maintained through our tax money to even take their dogs to the vet. Each of these vehicles are worth around 25 million. I challenge these 225. Come in front of the media and declare how many vehicles you own and claim that you won't buy more vehicles because of this. There is no money to purchase medicine and beds. They are asking money from the rich. They are asking for money like that and in turn are prepared to apply for loans to import 257 vehicles. What madness is this?
However, issuing a release a short while ago, the Prime Minister's office stated the government has decided today to not import even a limited amount of vehicles, taking the current situation of the country into account. Accordingly, the issue stated the previous proposal of importing a limited amount of vehicles has been rejected and in turn no vehicles will be imported under the proposal.
Most of the crops this season have been destroyed because farmers were unable to add fertilizer to the crops. The farmers are grieving that they might not even make enough profits to bring food to their tables.
The farmers of the Pansiya Panhayaya area in Suryavawa of Hambantota said this situation arose because they didn't receive the urea fertilizer needed for the yellow season. All these crops have turned yellow because they didn't receive fertilizer treatment. Fertilizer is not even available in the shops. A bundle of fertilizer is 3,500 rupees at the shops. We can't afford that amount. The farmers here are very helpless and struggling with poverty. What do we eat now? Look at the state of these crops. There is no way to buy fertilizer this time. We didn't even add a single bag of fertilizer this time. We had to purchase rice from around 85 to 90 rupees a kilo to eat. If we take in 10 kilos, we can't afford to sustain ourselves for a week. So how do we eat and survive? While the fields in the Govipala Junction area in Rajangane of Anuradhapura are ripe, the fields are covered with weeds. The farmers said the situation has arisen because they did not receive the sufficient amount of weedicides needed, which must be added systematically throughout the stages of plant growth.
The National Operations Centre for Prevention of COVID-19 outbreak was convened with the participation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Presidential Secretariat this morning to discuss the current situation in the country. The discussion was attended by all factions representing the COVID-19 task force. It was reported that discussions were held on the future course of action when imposing and lifting travel restrictions in the country.
We informed that the travel restrictions will be lifted on the 25th so that the people can purchase essential items. The travel restrictions are not lifted to organized parties. Even when I was traveling, there were a large number of vehicles. The people haven't taken up the responsibility yet. I noticed that many vehicles carried the board saying doctors. There is no way there are so many doctors on the road. You have to find out the name of the doctor and other details. Many people are carrying this seal pretending to be doctors. If the people have not understood the gravity and act accordingly, there is no point in closing down the country. So you cannot just do this by implementing the law. They have to be responsible too. The challenge is how to distribute vegetables and other essential items to low-income earners. That is what should be organized by the Grama Seva offices properly.
Now, according to the Department of Meteorology, several provinces in the country will experience heavy showers in the coming 3 days of this week.
Showers or thunder showers will occur at times in western, Sabaragamuwa, central, northwestern and southern provinces. Very heavy falls above 150 millimeters can be expected at some places in the western Sabaragamuwa provinces and in Galle, Matara, Kandy and Nuwara districts. Wind speed can be increased up to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour at times over the island, and especially wind speed can increase up to 60 kilometers per hour at times in the western slope of the Central Hills, Northern, North Central, Northwestern and Uva provinces and in the Hambantota district.
Wind speeds across the country will increase in the coming few days. Therefore, we would like to advise the fishing and naval communities to be vigilant and not set out to sea. According to our analysis, it is very clear that the weather will intensify in the coming few days. What are the rivers that are prone to overflow? What steps have been taken to prepare for floods? As of today, Daduroya, Kalu River and the Ging River have reached the threshold level. We will experience a flood situation when it rains excessively in the coming 3 days. We have informed you beforehand. So make sure you go to the safety locations. Do not go sightseeing and attempt to take selfies. Do not engage in careless activities that will cost you your life. We will be able to reduce the number of casualties due to these calamities if you follow our instructions.
This is the blessed season of Vesak. We commemorate the birth, enlightenment and demise of Lord Buddha. In this blessed season of Vesak, it is important for us to reflect on how the Buddhist philosophy can be used to relieve us of the stress we are undergoing these challenging times. We leave you tonight with this piece of advice in the words of Dharmacharya Venerable Kotawai Susilathera. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
The epilogue.
ජීවිතය කියන්නේ අපූර්ව අත්දැකීම් ලබා දෙන පාඩම් මාලාවකට නමක්.
The series of lessons that give you wonderful experiences can be simply defined as life. Even now, we are experiencing a series of lessons. That is why we face difficult times and hardships in life. During the Vesak season, we are taught how to strengthen our physical health through achieving mental peace. Therefore, the teachings of the Buddha have clearly explained how to overcome the bitter and difficult experiences in life by looking at them and thinking about them in a positive, realistic and prudent perspective. So let's be realistic and strive to experience life wisely.
එනිසා යථාර්ථවාදී වෙමු ප්‍රඥාවන්තව ජීවිතයේ අත්දැකීම් ජය ගන්නට වීරියවන්ත